people up too much I want to keep as much time for audience questions as we can. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction. So welcome to everyone, all of our attendees. Feel free to keep calling in. There is a chat, so if you have any questions, even now at the start, just put that into the chat, and hopefully, even if I don't see it, one of our other organizers will. So this is our lovely poster, which I'm sure most of you already have seen. Let's see. Oh, too far. So the first thing I'm just going to mention is a shout out to our sponsor, version 1. I'm not going to read this off because it'll feel very awkward, but version 1 of this is not the first event of ours that they've sponsored. They've been really good, great sponsors. Their sponsorship for this event includes a book giveaway. So it's going to be people picked at random. So you should hear after the event. It'll be a random choice out of the attendees. So if you've won, you'll hear from us afterwards. One of our panelists is from version 1. So I don't know if you want to say a couple of words or anything.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that they've been great every time that we've worked with them. We've done some in-person events before, and it's been really good, and we really appreciate them sponsoring this. Especially, I feel it's a bit weird to sponsor an online event. People don't really know how it works, but it's gone well. So thanks to version 1. And then the only other thing is our audience Q&A, which I think is what a lot of people are looking forward to. So it's a website called Slido. So if you go to sli.do and put in the code there on the left-hand side, you will be able to submit your own questions during the event. So I, as a moderator, will have another screen in front of me with all the questions. We'll try and get through as many as we can. If I might have to summarize a couple up into if they're similar enough, just to make sure we get through as many as possible. But yeah, that's, I think, all the main information. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because otherwise I can't put the code into the chat for Slido. So at this point, it's time for introductions. I will say very briefly that my name's Claire. I work for a company called Carrick, and I will be the moderator, so I'll be reading out all the questions this evening. Anyone want to kick us off from the panel and start off with your introductions? Andy, go for it.
Hi, my name is Andy Jarvis. I founder of Eximo Marketing, a marketing strategy consultancy. I've sort of met several other people from this event and the organisers before, and I'm pleased that they invited me on. There's other people here with sort of better tech experience than I have, but it's an important subject. You'll hear from my voice that I'm not from Northern Ireland. I am originally from Bradford, but I've been here 10 years and have some particular experiences of being black in Northern Ireland that I think will hopefully add to the discussion and the debate today. So please do ask as many questions as you want. There's very different experiences, backgrounds and opinions here, and it'd be good to hear from everybody to understand what questions you have to ask, and hopefully we can answer them from our particular context.
I'll just pick who wants to go next. Aaron, do you want to go next? Introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Aaron Carey. I'm a lead software engineer at Rapid7. So I started my career in tech about 8 years ago now, where I started as an exploit research intern. I've just sort of moved my way up to lead software engineer. And I've been in Belfast for 5 years after they opened the Belfast office.
Awesome, thanks. Honey, do you want to go next?
Sorry, I didn't hear my name there. Hello, everyone. My name's Honey Bell. I'm a technical consultant with version 1, and I've been in Northern Ireland for the past 10 years. I moved from Birmingham over here. I actually followed chased a man to come here. I joined my husband over in Belfast, and we've loved it here in Northern Ireland ever since. So yes, looking forward to this event. So please ask your questions, and we'll try and get the answers. If not, I would pass it on to somebody else who's cleverer than me.
Thank you. Zalma?
Hi everyone, I'm Zama. I'm an engineering manager in Vioni, a small startup company. We deal with robotic solutions for multiple industries. I moved here to Northern Ireland in 2012, and I was in England for 12 years, and I was born in South Africa, in Ikopo, in a tiny town. And I'm looking forward to this chat. It's going to be quite interesting, and I'm looking forward to the questions that we're going to get, and hopefully we sort of create an insight to Black lives in tech in Northern Ireland. So looking forward to it.
Awesome, thank you. And Jennifer?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jennifer. I'm a DevOps Big Data Engineer at BT. I'm also a YouTuber, a blogger, and a speaker. I run my own platform where I also have a newsletter where I send out monthly coding resources to help others get into tech, as I got into tech without a degree and learning to code. So I try and use my platform to inspire others, particularly those that are underrepresented in tech, to consider getting into tech. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. It's not something that I've really had the opportunity to share, and I think that this would be really good for all of us, and to kind of get an insight into our experience and get some understanding, and hopefully can be some knowledge that you can share with other people as well. But I'm excited to be here, so thank you for having me.
Awesome, thanks everyone. Thanks again for joining us and being willing to do this panel. So the first topic, I'm going to run through a couple of topics that we've had some brief discussion on beforehand. So the first topic is around unconscious bias. So we've talked a little about this, issues such as being the only Black person in the office, and how people handle that, especially in Northern Ireland, whether people are willing to talk about race at all. So yeah, if anyone wants to jump in with their opinion and start from there, or I can ask a few more pointed questions, but feel free to just start talking if you have anything to say.
I'll kick off, if that's all right, just with a sort of a bit of an experience point that I find, and I know Jennifer, sort of, there's a lot of us moved here. Let's put it that way. And I find in other parts of the UK, in other parts of Ireland, even that people are much better and find it much easier to talk about race. I know I've had conversations with colleagues. I've been in receptions of some fairly big companies in Northern Ireland where the receptionist is ringing through to the person I've gone to meet, who I've never met before, and you can hear them trying to describe me and using every word possible, but not black. You know, he's the tall fella, green shirt, big earphones, holding a microphone. It's like, just say it's the black guy. And there's this reluctance almost, and I think it comes from a lack of exposure to people. You know, Northern Ireland is not the most diverse country in the world, and you know that's various reasons, from the historical troubles and things like that, and I think it's changing, but a lack of exposure to people who didn't fit into that easy Catholic Protestant division makes it really difficult for people to talk about. So that, to me, is part of the issue, is that people don't know how to have a discussion and therefore default to just denying that a problem exists. And, you know, we'll probably mention it several times tonight that currently there are more racist attacks registered by the police in Northern Ireland than there are sectarian attacks, which to me, you can argue about the figures all you want and about reported or unreported attacks. I'm not even interested in having the debate. What that tells me is that there is a bigger problem with race in Northern Ireland than anyone here is prepared to accept. You know, oh, we can't be racist, we don't have a black community. Well, that comment in itself has just, you know, opened the door to problem. You know, there's just no acceptance that the community here exists. Therefore, you know, I've had conversations with people where they're looking at me stood in the middle of Belfast going, we don't have black community here. You know, you do, I'm here, I'm talking to you. So it's issues like that where there's an erasure of black people from a discussion, an unwillingness or an unnaturalness in having that discussion as well, which leads to problems of we can just push it to the corner. And when things live in the corners and live in the shadows, nothing gets done about them. And I think events like this are really important to bringing this issue into the spotlight. And I think people ask, well, what's George Floyd got to do with Belfast, or what's George Floyd got to do with Northern Ireland? This is what it has to do. Started a conversation. It's lit a fire underneath this conversation, not just in Belfast. It's done it in Paris, in Manchester, in London. It's done it across the world. It's lit conversations about race that is forcing people to have them. And for that, I think it's a good thing. I'll be quiet now and let somebody else talk. Otherwise, I'll be here all night.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, I know when I moved over 5 years ago, like quite shortly after, just by coincidence, like we were putting on unconscious bias training. So a woman, Risha Grant, came out to the Belfast office, and she was talking about racial bias. She was talking about bias against women. She was talking about all different types of bias against minorities in tech, and she was relating to people. And she spoke to me at one point, and we were talking about like racial bias, and so on. She said, "Oh, well, that doesn't really apply here. Like Aaron doesn't have any problems, so that means nobody in Belfast has any problems." And they sort of like, "Oh, well, Aaron's fine. Like he's doing well. He's got a senior engineer position. Like it must be okay." But I was definitely the first colleague that some people had worked with, or I was the only colleague at the time. But you could just see there was sort of like until that was sort of brought up within the training when I spoke up, they didn't realize. And so like I know a lot of other people did realize because I had conversations with them in the past, but it sort of was an eye opener for some people. That didn't like mean any harm or anything. They just didn't realize that it was a problem here too.
Yeah, I think like just from what Angie was saying, I agree. I was born and raised in London. I'm first generation British, Congolese, Black. I don't know how to explain it. So many levels to this. My family moved over to the UK from the Democratic Republic of Congo in Central Africa. So for me, moving over from London, which felt quite safe in terms of because it's so diverse, I never really had to think about racism. But I will say that the conversation was easier to have. Just like Andy said, it was much easier to have in London than it was here. The first week that I actually moved over, someone called me an N-word. Now, that wasn't exactly the best introduction to Belfast. I was not ready for that. But I was really shocked and surprised. That was the first time I'd ever had someone say that directly to me, to my face, and just drive off. You know, it was kind of random to me. But I think that the conversation needs to be had. And I think that unconscious bias as well, I think what it is that unconscious bias can be something that no one really thinks is racism. Like, for example, you might say something that is racist, but you don't think it's racist. But if someone tells you that it's racist and then you deny it's racist, then wow, like if I'm telling you that what you said is offensive or offensive to me because of the color of my skin, you have to understand why that is. I feel like there's also an image of what racism is. I feel like they think of the extreme levels of racism, whether it be the KKK or something like that. And they're like, no, I'm not like that. I'm not part of that. So I'm not racist. But I think that there are some words or maybe some judgments of Black people that people may have that you don't think could be racism. But I think it's important to kind of differentiate and really look within yourself and ask yourself, have I ever had a moment where I just want to suddenly just touch my colleague's hair because I've never worked with a Black person before? Or have I, you know, have I made some judgments about the kind of food that they eat? I don't know, like just those little things. It's a big topic, but I feel like it starts with asking questions and being open to hearing from those questions also, and not disregarding someone else's experience. I've kind of gone on a tangent a little bit from unconscious bias and stuff, but yeah, I think that's where I wanted to kind of add to that. I don't know if Honey or Zama want to add anything else.
No, as you and Jennifer and Andy said about moving from a big city, I lived in Manchester first when I moved from South Africa. So went to a school predominantly Asian. So race was already just an open topic. You never felt that there was an issue around race. And then when I moved to Northern Ireland, I actually went to a bar in Cumber, and then this guy approached me. I don't know him, and he just comes up and says, "By the way, an Asian guy has been to this bar 11 years ago, so you're safe here." Didn't know how that relates to me being there, but it made me very uncomfortable quickly, because he pointed out that, "Oh, you're a Black person, and the last person we had here was Asian." So already it made me tense. Instead of me just going there and enjoying my time, they tried to, maybe it was a comforting thing they wanted to do. They wanted to comfort me, tell me that I'm safe, but it felt a certain way. And I think that's when you talk about microaggressions, that's sort of something that I sort of indicate that is a microaggression towards me. You're pinpointing me as different. So that's one of my experiences in Northern Ireland, which I found quite odd.
For me, I would say, with regards to unconscious bias, would be people, whenever you're trying to have a conversation with someone, when I see someone who is white, you would know exactly when you're talking to that person if that person is uncomfortable. You would know if that person is the one that is, "I'm so uncomfortable, I can't stand you," or you would know if that person is like, "I really don't know if I should say you're Black or if I should say something else." You just know right away. And but coming from Birmingham over here, it wasn't something that I noticed that much, because people from Northern Ireland came across as really friendly. But it's when you start to have one-to-one conversation with people that you then start to pick on things to say, "Oh, okay, I think I know the way this person sees me. This person sees me as different," and then you work your way from there. I've had friends, and one of the things as well is that people here, some people, I wouldn't generalize everyone, in Northern Ireland don't think that racism they don't think it exists. The fact that you're friendly to me doesn't mean that someone else is friendly to somebody else. So I've had loads of friends of people who have been spat at here in Northern Ireland, and some people who have had that experience. I have not had that experience. And then some people come across to me to say, "Oh, you're very nice and you're very bubbly." And I'm like, okay, where is this heading? So basically saying that the next person or the previous person that they spoke to is not this way. So yes, it's unconscious, and some people put it across as being nice. I'm going to say something really nice, but at the same time, you're saying something about people that are my color. So it is considered as offensive.
I think it's sorry, just to add as well, I feel like the general consensus, like, they don't know in Northern Ireland the definition of racism. They don't know what that means, and I feel like that kind of does go through in terms of the history, as you say, that it's now starting to become more diverse. You're starting to see more Black people, more people of color, more different people of different religions, and etc. I feel like people have a definition in their head of what it is, and I think that it goes down to education as well. Being willing to educate yourself on what it means. I think that also in terms of surroundings, like, it'll be good to kind of be open to like not just being open to conversation, being open to criticism as well. Like if I feel that I've experienced something that I believe has been racism towards me, I want to be comfortable enough to come and just say, look, I feel this type of way. It can sometimes be a bit daunting for me. There's been moments I've experienced unconscious bias before, and I'm still in touch with that person. I'm not going to say that it wasn't in the workplace, but it was someone like in the tech industry, let's say, like here in Northern Ireland, and I'm still in touch with that person. But it's whether the conversation, like, can I approach that person and say, I feel like you said something really wrong to me? And in some cases, I've heard stories where it's kind of received as a rejection. I think that's what we kind of fear as well, is I want to tell you why what you said was wrong, but I want you to understand why what you said was wrong and be willing to receive that education so that you know for the next time. I understand that, you know, like you said, but it's not the most diverse city in the world, let alone the most diverse country, but be willing to hear when you have done something wrong, even if you don't feel like you have. I think that's something I wanted to just add in there as well sometimes.
Yeah, and just bouncing off that one, Jennifer, like one of the questions that I noticed in Slido was someone asked, what advice would you give to someone who's never had a Black friend before, who wants to talk to you but doesn't know what to say, or or what you cannot say to someone? And like I would just say, like, just approach them like a normal person. You don't have to think of us any differently. Just approach us, ask if you want to go for a coffee, talk tech, or if you have some other shared interests that you know about, even just figure out what those shared interests are. If you're gonna have shared interests, there's not a huge deal.
There's no script to it. Like in my opinion, I can understand it might feel like a taboo subject to try and go up to someone, or not, I wouldn't say go up to someone, like have like a conversation with someone and just say, hey, like can I take you for a coffee? I just want to have a conversation about something. There's no harm in that. I, like, for example, if someone was to approach me that way, I'm more than happy to just have a conversation and just share my experience. But my experience is also my experience. In the same sentence, do not depend on that person to completely educate you on everything. You also have a responsibility to educate yourself. So when it comes to like, I'll go a bit off, like in terms of like learning about the LGBTQ plus community. I am not going to just go to someone, one of my friends that identifies as gay or non-binary, and expect them to teach me every single thing about the community. I have responsibility to teach myself about that. So there's no harm like in taking that person aside and having a conversation and being able to, but also accept that if they don't want to, then it's totally okay. But
I think that's sorry, Jennifer. I think that's a key point. I mean, typically you find people who are doing Zoom meetups about this are okay to talk about it, and 99 times out of 100 I'll sit and talk to people who want to know and have that chat with them. But the thing you have to remember is that not everybody does want to do that. So if somebody says no, then just respect that. And I think the other thing as well is just it's really easy. I'm in marketing, right? So we generalize a lot. It's how marketing works. We try and put people in different camps or tribes or groups or whatever to market towards them. So we do that. But one thing that we say is it's hard to picture and say, look, the Black community isn't one thing. So people say, oh, there's a Black community in Northern Ireland. So having a chat with me and hearing what I think and what I say and how these things work is brilliant. But I don't speak for every Black person in Northern Ireland. I can't even speak for every Black person in my family. Because if you asked me, my brother and my dad, well, you'd get 3 different answers. And that's 3 people in one family. So there isn't such a thing as a Black community. We don't, I can't speak for everybody. I can tell you what my opinion is and give you some guidelines, what I think would be guidance and helpful hints and tips. But that, whatever you do, don't then say, well, Andy said that's okay. It's context specific. It's just like, look, you might swear in the pub with your mates, but you wouldn't swear in church, or you don't when you go to your granny's house. It's just context specific. You've got to understand what it is. So, yeah, I just say think about that. And I just laughed, and I must apologize, Jennifer. You were telling a great story, and I started laughing in the middle of it, which had nothing to do with you. It was the question I saw in the chat, which is is it okay to ask, where are you from? No, where are you really from? Yeah. I mean, you can ask that question if you want till the cows come home, but the answer will always be Bradford. I can't change that. It's where I was born. It's on my birth certificate. I'll always be from Bradford. But yeah, I think we've probably all been asked that question 100, maybe even 1,000 times. Yeah.
I end up leading with that every time I meet someone. And yes, I was born in South Africa, but as soon as someone says, where are you from? I lead with straight away, oh, originally from South Africa, because I know that it's going to get to that. So I can't just say Belfast, because I know. So it's best for me to just get to the finish line quicker than go around in circles to find that out.
And sorry, Annie, go on.
Something as well that one of the questions that I get asked anyways, whenever someone is trying to have a conversation with me, the first thing is, where are you from? And I'm like, okay, then and also as well, you get okay, what do you do? And sometimes you also get the fact that people just assume that because you're Black, you're a carer, or you work in healthcare, or you're a nurse. So sometimes you actually see the surprise in people's faces when you tell them that, oh no, that's not what I do. I do something totally different. So it's that some people are trying to have the conversation, but the unconscious bias is already in, for some people, it's already in your brain. So your brain is already telling you what things to ask, and it just goes straight out, and you're like, oh, okay, I didn't really get to know this person.
Honey, can I ask you a question about that? Does that happen in a professional context? Because there's a difference between people meeting you in a social setting and assuming you're a carer. Not to say it's right, it's not. But do you find that at work as well, where I'm the senior lead developer of, and they're like, oh, do you get that as well?
You get the look, you get the oh kind of situation. It's not like someone would say, okay, you're automatically a carer, because definitely you can be a carer. This is not a hospital or a nursing home or something like that. But you get that look where you walk in and maybe you're having some you're having a meeting, and then you just walk into like pitching something, and then you get that look to say, oh, okay, so that girl I just passed in the lift actually works here. And you get that. And because of the fact that I don't know about people who were, I wasn't born here, but people who grew up here might have a very different, they might not know that look, but because where coming from, because I'm originally from Nigeria, and you have that look when you see people, and like, okay, this person has already sized me from head to toe to know what I'm worth. You know that look. So I don't know if it's different for the Black people who were born here, if they have, because they have some sense of, yes, I am originally from here kind of situation. So yes, you are right, Andy, it is.
Yeah, I mean, so I've one of my friends here too. So he's a mixed race, but he's one of the only Black people he knew growing up. So he just said he's had a sort of a warped sense of community until he grew up and started going to when he started going straight into Belfast city center, and then seeing a more diverse community within Belfast, because he would have grown outside of Belfast. So he said it was totally warped, and the only Black people he knew was family. We would visit maybe once or twice a year, type thing.
Well, sorry, Jennifer, were you going to say something else?
Yeah, I was going to just kind of add, in terms of what Andy asked Honey, but in terms of experiences or getting a funny look and stuff, I think I shared this in one of my first blogs. I think that I don't think that a lot of people where I worked were expecting someone to be Black, honestly. I did sometimes get that look, when I went down to the canteen, it was like, she's new, so I've had those options, those kind of experiences. But I think because I have a social media platform, I get more of the judgment on social media, whereas I've never seen a Black person be an engineer before. That happens, it's always kind of blowing people's minds a little bit, or I do get the racism or the judgment. And I think that even if you go on my YouTube channel, the first video I did, there was a lot of comments about, you're not an engineer, you're just a web developer, what are you talking about? It was just why they kind of want to put you down to what you actually are. And I'm I just did a whole 18-minute video telling you what I am. Read the message, but yeah, I tend to experience that more even now on social media. The judgment is how can you be Black and be an engineer? Those two don't correlate. It's not something that they see, but it is definitely here. So in terms of the experience that Honey has, it's more of a social media thing that I tend to experience it in.
No, I was going to say something there, because my first job was in Cookstown. So most of the people I worked with had not spoken to a Black person or worked with a Black person. So I felt that a lot. And one of the guys in the workshop said to me, but it's good that they hired you because it's showing diversity in the company. And I was like, no, they hired me because I'm qualified to do the job. It's got nothing to do with the diversity. It's because I'm qualified. But that's something that you would always get if you change jobs or you move to a different job. Someone would always sort of put into that diversity side of things, of that's why you were hired, which then it sort of puts you down a little bit, because it's like, hold on, but I think I'm pretty good at what I do. So it's not about the color of my skin.
You don't go to Cookstown or Cumber anymore, though, do you? You've learned now to stay away from those places.
See, my husband's from Cumber, so
oh dear, you should get divorced. Sorry if anyone's listening from Cumber or Cookstown, but yeah. Ooh. Anyway, quick, move on, somebody.
Well, I'm gonna be sneaky and use that perfect diversion from Zama to move on to our next topic. I will also say, though, on the point of like unconscious bias and things, like as a white girl, I would say that the biggest thing that, like, one of the biggest things we have to do is like educate yourself, you know, read the books, read the blogs, everything else. Don't wait until you meet a black person and then be like, I have all these questions because I've never got a chance, you know. Like, you need to do that work yourself.
And I just took one more thing in, Claire. Sorry. I did a live podcast about Black Lives Matter from a marketing perspective, which is how I ended up here. And one of the questions a couple of people asked was about, is there someone who does unconscious bias training from a Northern Irish perspective? Because a lot of the time when they bring trainers in from England, they've lived or worked in London or Manchester or, you know, Leicester, Bradford, where the ethnic minority population is just much bigger, and they got to Belfast and didn't quite know how to localize the content. But I have details of a couple of providers locally who do that, so if anybody does want that, give us a shout. For your organization, obviously, give us a shout and I can pass on those details.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so on to based off of what Sam was talking about, our next topic, what we're talking about, is the workplace. So specifically progression and promotion, and diversity inclusion within the workplace, all those sorts of things, whether all that diversity inclusion work and whether it contributes towards promotions and whether it's recognized, all those sorts of topics. So and also visibility, role models, things like that, which has come up already. So yeah, anyone want to?
Yeah, I can start with that. I do a lot of diversity and inclusion work. I tend to focus it outside of work rather than within, but I do try my best to kind of balance both. I think what I found, I would say that before the Black Lives Matter protests, before the death of George Floyd, I did find that a lot of the conversations in terms of D&I was just conversations. And there wasn't really a lot of action behind those conversations. And I'll say as well, from perspectives of talking to many Black people that are working in tech, whether it be in England or different parts of the UK, they've always, like, in the beginning, before I got into tech, I was told, do not join diversity and inclusion. Don't do it. I was always told, don't do that. And I was like, why? Because it's always just conversation, but there's never action behind the conversation. And I think, like, now after the death of George Floyd, now I'm seeing the action. And I don't know, like, I don't know, like, if maybe Andy wants to add into this in terms of Black Lives Matter and marketing, but I found that, like, a lot of companies suddenly had something that they wanted to do. Everyone was doing something. It was just like, whoa. Like, Twitter's doing something, Google's doing something, Facebook's released this whole new plan. It's just like, why did we get to this point? The trauma of seeing someone being murdered triggered action. But I would have wished to have seen this type of passion in terms of seeing action within these companies and focusing on inclusion as well within the workplace. I would have loved to see that before because I didn't see it as often as I would have liked to have seen it. Also, in terms of going off, sorry guys, also in terms of focusing on the inclusion side of things as well, I do feel like we tend to kind of blur between the two. They focus on diversity. Let's hire somebody Black. Let's have someone that represents Black people as the head of diversity and inclusion. Let's make a new role for them here. Let's do that. But then the environment does not cater to them. So why have? Because I find that for me personally, from people that I've spoken to, I'm only going from my experience with people that I've also spoken to, and things that I've seen is that a lot of people will come into tech that are Black, and then they will leave a company because in most cases, they don't feel like they can be their full selves. They can bring their full selves into the workplace. And that's because the environment isn't inclusive. And I think that hopefully from the conversation that we also focus, we don't forget about inclusion. We talk about diversity a lot, but the inclusion side of things, it's just not there. And we have to bring that to the forefront, in my opinion.
I think just briefly to answer your question, there's I refer to it as handbrake capitalism at the minute, which is driven by social media, where companies are plowing along on a strategy to do A, and then something happens which blows up on social media. They pull the handbrake and go off to do D, and then come this way and that way. And I think George Floyd's murder was one of those moments. Now, there's part of me that says, why does it take such a horrific event for it to happen? And there's another part of me that says, well, every great change starts with a catalyst moment, and if this is the catalyst moment, stop complaining and just embrace the fact that change is happening and go with it. So I could probably just have that philosophical debate with myself over a long time, but I think what you see is the sort of social media handbrake happening a lot, and it's kind of just the culmination of a number of things over a number of times, and I think the slow brutality of it. American police have a history of shooting black people, and I think there's an instinctive thing about that, and it's always passed off as, oh, he was running, or she was stood, or she was, and it just feels like that's what law enforcement do in America. They shoot people, but this was just it felt like a slow, calculated murder, kneeling on someone, telling you they're dying until they died. It was just the most brutal thing, and I think coronavirus, people locked down, people out of jobs. There was a culmination of factors that just blew it up into the mainstream. And I think that, look, it's happened. So let's try and get on there. I think to answer your point again about what companies do, and is it, what are they doing? And is it just starting the discussion, and where did they go next, rather than just having the conversation? I'm not naming names, but I heard the story of a company in Northern Ireland who I was told by their graphic designer that they asked to replace some black people in some designs that they'd sent forward to them with white people, because they said it wasn't reflective of their market. And I was told, I was asked what my opinion was on this, and I promised I won't say fuck on this broadcast, so I won't tell you exactly what I said. But it was it wasn't something you'd say in front of your children. I went and had a look at this company's social media, and what did I find on Blackout Tuesday? Black Square. That sort of shit really, really irritates me. It's like, oh, well, we feel we have to do this because everybody else is doing it. But when the rubber hits the road, we don't want to get involved in this because, it doesn't suit our brand, or it's not really what we're about. And these are all just other terms for, if you ask me, they're all just other terms for we're a little bit racist, but we don't want to be seen to do that. So we'll put a black square up on Blackout Tuesday. So I think from that perspective, there's a lot of work to do and a long way still to go. I did say I'd be quiet on this question because I don't, with you guys work in tech much more than I do. So I am. Then there's a question there as well about, do you think that it's affected your career journey? And I don't feel, I run my own business, so it's probably difficult for me to speak about that. So I will shut up and I'll let you talk about career journeys. And do you think it's impacted you?
Just on the back of the career one, I know a lot of Black people who are business owners, CEOs, founders, or high up positions of businesses, because they moved to that point. So they, in some places, they've sort of hit the ceiling, and they have had to take a step to a different position. And places are happy to hire them because they have the sort of the skill, the rapport. They have the portfolio to prove that, hey, I'm skilled and I can do this. But sometimes you won't see the sort of internal movements. And so I would definitely say, I've been lucky enough. One of the questions was, would it be harder for me? Personally, not myself, but I have seen other people affected by that and have to move to different companies laterally before they can go upwards.
Just going to add to that as well, with regards to progression internally. Now, I am really happy, as Erin said there, for myself, I see that with the company and with Vision One, I am able to progress based on my abilities, and I'm being encouraged. But when it comes to now, I am the only Black person in the Belfast office, so it's just me. But I am surrounded by a lot of people from other ethnic backgrounds as well. But when it comes to, and one of the things Jennifer said as well is having people who are, so they work, and at the same time, if they're not happy or if they don't feel included, they leave that company. And you know, for example, whenever you move from one company to the other, it's very hard for you to progress. It's very hard for you to get to where you want to because you're moving from one place to the other. That's why I would say for most people, or for some people, it would be hard. And also as well, with regards to internal progression, one of the things I just wanted to chip in is that you have people who are, like, for example, in my company, I don't take alcohol. And when we go for nights outs, I don't need to tell anyone in the whole of our office. They know what to order for me. They know I don't take alcohol. That makes me feel included. As tiny as that is, that makes me feel like I belong. But some people, it might be that some people don't have that experience in terms of support. I have had a lot of different friends and different experiences where, for example, in the matter of whenever you want to know if your company supports you or not is when you're in crisis. That would be one of the things I would say. And I had a friend who had an issue in a tech company as well. And the friend had to be suspended for investigations to go on. And while they were investigating, this person heard nothing from their manager, not even to check up on them, to say, how are you doing? Are you still alive? Nothing. The whole team, no one contacted this person to say, I heard this is going on. How are you keeping? Now everything is being investigated. So it's not saying that this person is guilty or not guilty. There was no support whatsoever. And this is a big company here in Northern Ireland. I'm not going to call names. And at the end of the day, it turned out that the situation, that person was no longer guilty. And the company was like, oh, you can come back to work now. And the person was like, no, I'm not going back there. Because that way, that's the way you know if this company, if you're just a number, to for them to take. So that support needs to be, for most companies, is one thing I think needs to be drummed in, especially for middle management level. The people on the top might not really notice things, but the people who are at the local level are the ones who would be able to help people move up the ladder. So just imagine someone who is a manager, for example, and that person has, I don't want to say it, but that person is a racist, for example. Now, no one comes to your face to say, oh yeah, I'm a racist. No, you're not going to hear that. But if that person is a racist, do you think any Black person would progress, would go up the ladder? No, because it's only going to be people who are similar to them. So it's just, I would feel for progression and anything that's internal, it's for people to be for people to be conscious about things around them and know when things are wrong, educate themselves, as Jennifer has said, but also when things are not happening the way that they should, no one's stopping you from raising the red flag to say, I don't think this is right. So that's the reason why I say, like, most Black people in companies would just, if they don't like it, they don't feel included, they don't feel that they belong, they move on. But it's harder for them to progress because of the fact that they're moving from one company to the other to get to that level.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I think, like, there was a point I wanted to make and I totally forgot what it was. This always happens to me. Gosh, ADHD is such a nightmare. I think, like, just to kind of go off a little bit, because in terms of wanting to, like, feel a sense of belonging and moving on from other places, like, I think there was like a question in the Slido, something about potential employers, and as I look at when looking at potential employers, are you more likely to consider a company that has Black people in senior technical positions or on interview panels? Working in tech, this is the first time I've ever worked in tech. BT is the first company I've ever worked for that gave me an opportunity. I didn't think about how important Blackness was in the workplace until after I got here and realized, oh my gosh, like I'm the only one. And even though in London I've had like some jobs where I am the only person, whether it be doing internships and stuff, I've never lasted long in those places. I always end up leaving or going somewhere else and things like that. But having an environment that reflects modern society is incredibly important. But if it doesn't reflect modern society in terms of if it's not culturally diverse, there's not a lot of Black people, there's not a lot of Asian people, etc., you want to be comfortable coming into work. You want to wake up in the morning and be like, I can't wait to get to work today. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone on my Zoom call and, you know, seeing how their weekends are. It can, when you're in an environment where you are the only one, it can have those kind of effects. You like, it can have effects like, you know, in terms of feeling anxiety or not being able to get out of bed in the morning. It can affect you. I definitely had those moments for myself when I first moved here, where I did not want to get out of bed, that I literally took leave for a good week, 10 days with my manager. I'm like, I can't come into work. Like, it was just an emotional toll, that being the only one and not being able to communicate or even have someone trying to understand that. I think that was a real challenge that had a mental impact on me, that I had to just take a step back. And I think that that's part of the reason why education is important. Just like, I don't know if it was Zam or Honey that said this, maybe I'm wrong, but don't just wait for there to be a Black person in your workplace for you to educate yourselves on them. We do see them, we know they're present, you know that we're present. So why not take the time to just learn and understand and have a conversation? Leaving as well, in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement, when that was happening, I didn't hear from anybody, you know? And I think what it was is that no one knew how to have that conversation with me, which I understand. I mean, how do you bring that up? Like, you know, it's a hard topic to bring up, but I had to find and kind of get in touch with any of my Black colleagues that I'd connected with. But most of them none of them were based in Belfast. They were all based in England or Leeds or etc. And I had to message them on Skype and say, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, are you okay? And it's like, we're so tired of this, we're so tired. And I think, like, it would have been, I think for me, when it came to triggering a conversation, it had to be sending an email to everybody else with resources for them to feel comfortable enough to come to me and say, how are you finding all of this? But I think, like, God forbid, like, there's a next time, but when there is something that needs to be discussed, especially when it comes to race, have the conversation, you know? Don't be afraid to ask, how are you? And I can understand that as I'm Black, you're white, Asian, you may not understand what I'm feeling, but just the courtesy to just ask, are you okay, is such a powerful question to ask somebody, whether you understand what they're feeling or not. But listen to them, hear what they're feeling and hear what they're experiencing. But yeah, that's something that I just wanted to.
Absolutely. Like, listening to that, like, just like having that sort of, like, being able to open that question, like, are you okay? Like, I know myself, whenever the sort of BLM movement was happening and everything, I actually did have, like, leadership come and talk to me, like, in a regular one-to-ones maybe, but we had a regular one-to-one meeting. They're like, Aaron, look, like, I know it's maybe like a thing that people might be awkward to say, but I'm just gonna ask, are you okay? Like, outright. And they asked that question, and, like, I'm very happy that leadership on my team, like technical leadership and everything, are able to have that conversation with me and just sort of make me feel included. And, like, the fact that I'm able to look up to my leadership and know maybe there's a white man in my leadership, and, like, knowing, okay, he's going to advocate for me because I know that he is open to talk about these questions and have these difficult conversations. So he knows that if I need to take time off because I have family in America who's maybe close enough to the riots and things like that, I know that I'm going to be supported there and it's not going to affect me negatively. So it's have that support.
I think there was a question someone asked there about recruitment, so I'm just going to jump into that. Using my own experience with regards to when you're applying for a job. Now, I don't know about everyone else, but I think whenever you're looking for a job, it's one of the hardest, as a Black person, it's one of the hardest processes, because of the fact that that's when you remember that you're Black. Because for me, I couldn't wait to get rid of my maiden name, because of the fact that I felt my maiden name was too hard. And getting married, I was like, oh yes, this name is, so you wouldn't know if this person's Black, Asian, or whatever. It's just there. So it's one of the things where applying for jobs, I felt that I got a better chance by just putting in my name without my surname. And it's a good thing I've got such a unique name, so people wouldn't really know. And then you get the calls from so for some of the recruitment agencies, or even the ones from the company HR, and they're trying to figure out, when you're on the call, that they're trying to figure out if this person is white. You get that on the call, and then you get so when did you move? And they're still trying to ask and get to that final question, where are you originally from? So it was from my own experience, I have applied for jobs where I had to take out my surname. I've had a lot of friends do that as well, where they've had to even change their names to English sounding names, and taking up their cultural name and things like that. So it is, I would say it's looking for a job, it's hard for everyone, but I think for Black people, it is a little bit harder, especially going through that CV screening process, because you don't know.
I just support that with evidence. There's study after study after study done. I think it was first done in the 50s in America, but it's been done in the UK since the 60s. I think it's the earliest one I've read about, and was done again about a year ago, where they sent CVs with exactly the same information on. The only thing they changed was the name. No, it wasn't just about Black people. Yeah, and I can't remember the exact numbers. It was like 8 times more you got called to interview with just a bog standard British sounding name, as opposed to having something that sounded a little bit more ethnic. And every time they do the study, you get the same results back. So yeah, it's I could post a link to an article once I work out how to do it. That's got some background to that, and I'll stick it in the chat now.
With my name already is shortened by Zama. So my full name is Zama Shopegazi, which I would never put in any CV, because I know that they wouldn't be able to pronounce it. But so me, I don't have the experience of the CV thing, because my name is Zama and my actual maiden name is Lugayeni. So I've never changed it on any CV. So I can't say that I've got experience when it comes to recruitment and that side of things. But I'm completely shocked that happened. So it could have happened to me without me even knowing that it was happening that way. But that's something that's quite interesting. And I saw someone saying about blind applications, so no names on CVs. That could be something that would be good to look into.
I think with the blind application, it's one thing to get your CV noticed, and it's another thing to actually go for the face-to-face interview. I've had an experience where I had this lovely chat with, when you go for telephone interviews, talk about the whole technical bit. So it was a technical interview. We had it over the phone. And then afterwards, I was meant to go over to the office to have a face-to-face interview. Had a face-to-face interview with this lovely lady, and she was so sweet, and everything went really well. I was able to impress her, and she loved it. But the only stage was to then speak to the people who I will be working with. So she says, okay, we need to go to, and then when you enter the office, first of all, you get that vibe where everyone's staring at you. It's okay to stare. I know I'm beautiful. It is okay to stare. But then you can't get the looks where it's like, where did this one fall from? And then it was that way where in the interview panel, I left in tears. I didn't break down there, but when I got into the car, I just started to cry. It was as if you could see the disgust. It wasn't here in Belfast. It wasn't in Northern Ireland, but you could see the disgust in their faces. And the lady that had already aced said, she was like, oh, there's no problem. All you need to do is just answer these corporate questions and things like that. She was shocked. at the end of the day, she ended up trying to defend me. And I was like, there is no way I can work for this company. So it's one thing to go through the whole blind application. I know some companies do that, but it's another thing. I think it's something that everyone just, people, especially people in leadership, needs to educate themselves. Because from my perspective, that manager, she was all happy with me. I was already calculating how much I was going to bargain for salary and stuff. And then I met the big guys, and it was like the three of them, I would never forget their faces. And it was like, where did this one fall from? And it wasn't good. It wasn't a good experience. So I don't know if it's a good, that would help you get your CV to the company, but it's actually you now working in that company and I'm feeling that you're, even if I was offered a job in that company, I wouldn't go because I wouldn't feel as if I belonged. Or it's one thing about being diverse. So we've gotten through the door with diversity, but would I feel like I'm included? Would it just be one where I would just strive and then at the end of the day, I would just end up leaving? So
I think that kind of tips into one of the questions that I saw in Slido. And I'm not just sending text messages, I am reading the questions when I'm looking away. But somebody asked about how do you draw the difference between teachable moments and calling out outright racism? And that almost seems like something that happened there where there's a real difficulty in that, in trying to work out what you should do when these things happen, because sometimes some of the things that racist action is just so pernicious or just so subtle sometimes. Like, I saw everybody nodding when you were saying about the person on the other end of the phone trying to work out if you were black or not. And it's one of those things that it's hard to describe to somebody who's never had it happen to them. But everyone who's had it happen to them just knows it's there. And you can't, if you called that out every time it happened, A, you'd be known as a troublemaker. B, you'd just be faced with this, no, that's not what I was doing. This defensive reaction. And then the onus is on you to then prove that it did happen, which is really, really, really difficult to do. So difficult, you probably can't do it. And then it's, well, you're just a lying trouble causer, and it just comes back around on you. So I don't have an answer between, what is a teachable moment where you can go, look, actually, that's probably not the right thing to be saying or doing here. And when you should just dig your heels in and go, I'm sorry, this just isn't happening anymore. Again, it's probably an individual thing, isn't it? But I don't know how I'd have handled that, being in that situation, walking in for an interview, thinking this is the job that I want. What are my salary expectations? And then being made to feel not welcome there. Sometimes you feel like, damn it, I'm going to go for that job and I'm going to make them feel awkward because I'm just going to sit there every day and prove a point. But other times you're like, life's just so short, right? I just want to be happy. I want to work in a place where I'm wanted and just do the thing. I don't want to have to fight for everything all the time. It's 2020. We should be past this. So I don't know the answer. I don't know if anyone else has the answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a big thing for me as well. Like, people always ask, like, well, why don't you just have a conversation? Maybe they would listen. Like, it is great. In an ideal world, everything would be a teachable moment. And I'd be able to explain to that person who did like a subtle racist thing, like, oh, well, maybe you don't want to do it that way because this is how it might be perceived, and it's possibly offensive for these reasons, or this is the history behind it. And like, in some cases I've done that over here, and it's been oh, well, you're American, that's only a problem in America. I'm like, it's absolutely not, because you just proved it right now. Now you're like gaslighting me and just making me shush because you don't think it's a problem here. So I wish everything was a teachable moment, and I do try as much as I can, but like, fighting every day over it isn't worth it.
If no one else has follow-up that they wanted to make on that, I'm going to use that to sort of fall into our next point. So we sort of covered recruitment and things like that. So the next topic was around like creating a better future. So people coming into the industry or younger kids, and things like role models or what roles tech can play in this even. So yeah, if anyone wants to talk on that topic.
I'm aware I've been talking quite a lot, but as I mentioned, I'm going to have to run away before the end of the panel. So I'll say this before I go, if that's okay. And I think I wouldn't want anyone listening to me to think that I don't like Northern Ireland and I don't like living here. I love it, right? And there is this sort of well, it's not semi, it's a racist response here when you complain about things in a new place and you get, oh, well, just bugger off back then. Like, that's not, I want the place to be better. And I think there is a bright future for Northern Ireland. And I think it's a slow process. Change happens slowly, but it also happens because people make that change happen. And there's a question in Slido about what do we think, or what are we doing about the extraction of Africa's resources? And there's a few other questions and things like that. And I'm looking at that going, well, do you know what? That's not within my sphere of influence. My sphere of influence is I'm a marketer based in Northern Ireland that works with a lot of fairly high profile businesses in Northern Ireland. I'm a member of the Institute of Directors, and I talk to a lot of senior people. I am using my platform that I have to keep this discussion going and to keep it relevant, and to talk to people at the top of organizations, in the middle of organizations, the bottom of organizations, that there's a race problem in Northern Ireland. And we can fix it now and make this place better for the future, or we can ignore it now and it'll still be a problem in 20 years' time. And I have a daughter growing up here, and she loves the place. And I want this to be an open and inclusive society, not just racism to go away. I want sectarianism to go away. But these are sort of multi-year issues and multi-year conflicts that are taking time to go about. So is there hope for the future? Yes. How do we get there? We all do what we can and use our platforms as often as we can to keep the discussion going, but also to keep the actions going. And we're working on something with the Institute of Directors, which is about trying to create something that businesses can sign up with. I don't know what that is yet. We're still miles away from having anything ready, but there's a great future. And, we just need to keep this discussion going, because it won't change overnight, but we have to set the direction of travel, because if we don't, we won't change anything, and it'll still be the same, and we'll still have police giving out tickets at the Black Lives Matter protests, but not the week after when people are defending statues. We'll still have these issues of people being assumed to be the cleaner when they're there as a software engineer, and we'll still have issues of tech not recognizing Black women, tech not recognizing people using AI and things, because it's just trained on such a weird data set. But there is a future for it, and a real positive one as well.
I'll let the other panelists jump in again in a second, but since you're leaving, Andy, I just want to say thanks again for taking part this evening and stepping up for the panel.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Right.
I'm just going to go on that with regards to the creating a better future. Now, on a good note, one of the things, like when I first one of my first job here in Northern Ireland, I was buddying someone, and the person was learning from me, and it was a situation where I had to speak to one of the clients, and the person was listening in on what our conversation, and the client was really, really nasty. Is one of the things where he was like, I don't know, go back to where you're from. And he was like, you're just sitting, taking all the money from this country and things like that. And I didn't expect that, especially when someone else was listening. So after that, I acted as if, because sometimes when you face some certain situations, you just put that behind you and just continue. But at the same time, I knew I was going to go home and think about it, but I didn't want it to affect me at work. But this person who was listening on to the conversation just couldn't understand the reason why I still sat there. And he dashed off and he went over to some of the managers over there. And it was so beautiful. There were like 5 ladies. They were chatting amongst themselves. And this guy walked over and said, this and this and this has happened. And he was like, let me have it. They were all trying to like rush to their phone. So like, it was beautiful, because they were all trying to, it wasn't a matter of who's going to go first. Oh, this is an awkward one. No, they all wanted to deal with that issue and deal with it thoroughly. That client's account was closed because of that. And I went home and I felt proud to be in Northern Ireland, really, really proud. So that's one of the good things. In terms of the new job, creating a better future for our kids, as young as our children are, like I've got 2 boys, and we've never talked about race. It's one of the things that we just don't talk about. It's like, just live your life the way you want to live your life, and that's it. But I was forced to have the race conversation with my 7-year-old as of that time, when we, my car was, there was something wrong with my car, so we had to take the bus. And coming home, he was expecting, so I've got two boys. So I was sitting with one of my sons, the youngest, and then he sat on his own. And then he kept asking me, Mommy, when is someone going to come sit next to me? And I said, no, just sit there, and it's going to be a packed bus. It's 5 o'clock, so definitely someone will come sit next to you. And it was very strange that, and I didn't think much about this. Like, I always give people the benefit of the doubt. I didn't think much about this at all. And the bus was packed, but his seat was the only one that, aside from the one my youngest was at, it was just, his seat was empty. So in my head, I was like, and he kept asking, in my head, I was like, oh, these people are being very considerate because of the fact that it's a young boy. Things like that was just going through my head. And then he came over, he just said to me, Mommy, no one's sitting next to me. Is it because I'm brown? Now he doesn't say black, he believes he's brown. So is it because I'm brown? And I was stunned, I was shocked. And I didn't know how to process the whole thing. And it was, so it's something I think it's already going into, it's already sweeping into the next generation. And I believe it's, the earlier we'll start to curtail this, the better for us. Because if a 7-year-old already knows that there's a difference between someone who is white and someone who is brown, then there is an issue. So I know Zuma works with kids. I think it's one of the things companies should try to invest in, especially if you've got a diverse company. It's something that I believe that our kids should be able to see us to say, okay, first of all, there are Black people who you can look up to as role models. There are people who look like you. So if companies can create visibility, I'm not saying that, okay, yeah, just grab all the Black people and say, okay, let's go for a school trip. No, but try to support the young generation, especially, not especially, but people from ethnic minorities as well.
I'll jump on there. Yes, Hannah, that was right. So I work with Career Ready. So I go into high schools. So it's girls age 16 and above. So this is quite good because it's also highlighting that there are Black people in tech. And then on top of it, there's women in tech as well. So it's quite rewarding to actually do that, because I know for a fact that it's harder for you to do something that you don't see anyone else doing. So it's easy to do something that you see people there, they're doing it, you know that it's possible, because that's what happens. Usually, you know, the more visibility we have as not just women, but also Black women is going to be tremendous when it comes to the younger generation going into tech and being comfortable with the fact of even doing tech. So it being in their sphere of stuff that they want to do in life. So I think we need to work with companies, the companies we're in, to make sure that we are visible, not just as women, but as well as Black people, so that more people join those companies and join those type of industries. So I think that's the best way forward, because I do have my nieces, one of my nieces actually said to me, what do I say to people that keep on wanting to touch my hair? And I was shocked that happens at that age now, but it's a hard one, because it's also other parents that need to say it's not right for you to be going into someone's personal space and touching someone's hair. So I don't know what we can do on that part, but I think it needs to start from home and the conversations you have within your family. And I think that's how it's gonna help people be comfortable and recognize the Black community in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, and I think just another thing as well is, like, I think one thing we haven't talked about yet, but I realized we spoke about it initially whenever we all got together and met. It's like I'm half Scottish, so like I grew up being biracial, and I just didn't realize racism could be a thing until like there was a car driving past and they shouted at my mom, not my dad. They shouted at my mom, who's Scottish and white. They shouted at her saying that she was an N-word lover. And it was like it's just shocking, because I'd heard the word before and I'd read it in books and like I understood the historical context. But the fact that someone called my mom this and she was white really confused me. And like it definitely starts in the home, and there's definitely biracial relationships, people like dating other races and things like that. So there's like loads of white allies that are out there that are dating somebody of a different race, and they're also one of our like biggest supporters for underrepresented people. And like I think we should just like keep in mind that like whenever we have that, they're obviously educating within their own home as well, and sort of educating kids sooner, like, oh yeah, a relationship can look like anything. It doesn't have to be two people of the same color or anything like that. It's something that like it's definitely less common that I've noticed in Northern Ireland. Like, I see people younger towards my age dating different races, but the community before maybe didn't support it as much.
Awesome, thank you. We've got a couple of minutes left, so if everyone's happy enough, there's a couple questions in, and so we luckily have covered a lot of the questions in the slide already, but I'll see if there's a couple that we haven't covered, and then leave enough time for everyone to have a chance at a final statement. That sounds good. So let's see. A quick one, potentially is someone's written in asking about if is there a meetup group in Belfast that you know of that's by and for Black people in tech in Belfast, and do you know if there is one, and if not, would you consider starting one?
I'll say for me, I have no idea. I don't think there is. Not that that's been brought to my attention anyway. I don't know about everybody else, but for me, everyone that I've connected with has always been on social media, and I'm just tweeting them. And the only organization that I found, they're based in the UK, called UK Black Tech. They're the only ones I'm familiar with, but I don't think they've ever held a meetup in Northern Ireland at all. But I'm not familiar with any, but I don't know if anyone else has any idea about any.
No, I don't know any. I haven't seen anything, but I'll keep a lookout.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely noticed that women tech makers and women who code definitely have, like, you see a lot of women of color in the panels and things like that. But I haven't seen like sort of like underrepresented minorities besides sort of like focus on women in Belfast. So like I think it definitely is something interesting. But just keep supporting each other within these communities that we already have.
I guess like being that like a lot of us are still working from home, so I know that like sometimes like UK Black Tech, there's Coding Black Females, they do virtual events. I know it's probably not going to feel the same. I'm not really sure if people are starting to have like meetups in Belfast at the moment, but I'll put some links to UK Black Tech's meetup group and also to Coding Black Females in case you do want to go to an event and connect and network with others. And if you're on Twitter, there's the hashtag Black Tech Twitter. And that's also another hashtag where a lot of the Black community in tech from all over the world use that hashtag and connect with one another. So it might be a good way for you to network with people while we're all kind of working from home and trying to avoid, the virus.
Awesome, thank you. We have someone from our chat that's hoping to ask a question. So I'm going to, I think I can let the person speak and temporarily and they can ask their question out loud. So Shakel, do you want to, if I press this button, do you want to, oh, I think it seems to kick them out and then invite them back in. So did you want to ask your question? We can see you now, Shakel. You're on mute though. 2 seconds.
Hello, everybody. You lot caught me by surprise. I didn't even expect it to come on camera. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so my name is Shaquille Civic, and I'm an entrepreneur like probably most of you in here right now. And what I'm going to say to you, what the problem is we take the money as a currency, before trust first. And this is the problem, right? I had the issue with Basingstoke iTech, right? Where I brought sales training into that establishment, right? And they kept calling me the wild card, the wild card. But if 10 young students walked through that door, they just made 100K because of me, right? This is where I'm at, guys, right? Because the moment you take the money is the moment they've got control of you. You see, not everyone can pay you in the currency of recognition. And it's the most trumped card you can play. So I think more or less, this is the entrepreneur mindset, and it needs to be ingrained in us more that the reason why we started businesses was to solve problems, right? So in saying that, you know, this is where I think we should go. In my mind, regarding systemic racism or anything of the sort. I understand, and I really do appreciate what you guys are doing. You're coming together to make this happen, but you know, you've got to be willing to kick the door down. Like, I think Wiley was a perfect example to show us what really happens behind closed doors. Yeah, when someone says something that's wrong, their whole career can be shut down. Yeah, but it's not the same when it's on the other shoe though, right? When people want to call us the N-word or anything of the sort, it gets brushed under the carpet, or it was an accident, or it was a joke because our friends did. Do you understand? So I think there's, you know, I think that's what I've realized, as, you know, my journey in this entrepreneur life. And I think some of you have probably seen some of my statuses on LinkedIn as well, and thinking, what's this guy doing? But the most thing I want you guys to understand is professional. People who use the word professional are people you need to watch out for. And the reason why is because people value people, and you need to be yourself the whole way forward. So that means people are putting on two faces, right? I'm the same through the whole process. LinkedIn is just another platform like Facebook to me. And, you know, this is where, you know, I'm the one that's the risk taker. I will save my mind, you know, and I won't let anyone control me. So that's why I say to you, my currency is not money, it's trust first.
Sure.
That's all
I think trust first is definitely it is an interesting thing. It's just sort of authenticity. Like, you know, it's like certain, like, it is definitely important to have like inclusion and sort of have a safe environment and sort of be able to be your authentic self and not to worry about something getting brushed under.
Oh, sorry, that was my bad. I changed him back to being an attendee, and forgot that temporarily kicks you out and then brings you back.
No problem. I seen that you posted that Black Tech Twitter, and like I remember whenever that hashtag came out, I was like straight on it, and like it definitely made me feel included, because like I'd worked with Black people in the past, and like whenever I worked in the Austin office, but whenever I moved to Belfast, I felt alone for a while before we started getting other people into the office. So like I think it is really it is a good way to connect and sort of social network and market yourself, like your authentic self out there.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry for that. It's probably very loud since I'm typing with my mic on. So we've got about 5 minutes left. So just in the interest of not taking up all of your evenings, do people want to go around and give like a closing final statement or any other points that you wanted to raise that we haven't reached in the evening?
I wouldn't say that I have anything like that I haven't said before. I think that I just encourage everyone to just edit yourselves and learn from others. If you are comfortable in asking someone, you know, to speak with you about their experience, there's no harm in asking the question. Also be prepared for rejection also. Everyone's experience of Blackness is different. I think even that question that came up about what we're doing in Africa, about the mass extraction, etc., you're already assuming that everyone here is African. Like, they may not identify themselves with African, even though, you know, we can go back in history, etc. But then some people might identify themselves as Caribbean, as Jamaican, as Trinidadian, like there's so much more to Blackness than just thinking Africa. That in itself is something that, you know, you'll need to pray about. I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, just take the time to educate yourself. And this is also another step, you know, being a part of this event and taking the time out of your evenings where you could have been, you know, cooking your meals on Netflix and chill, like doing whatever you're doing, but you've taken the time to come here and hear our experiences and take this experience with you to your families, to your friends, to your workplaces. But also, one thing I'll say is be vocal when you see something that is wrong, especially like if you feel as a white person, as an Asian person, if you see something that is wrong, if you're seeing an imbalance, if you're seeing some injustice within the workplace towards someone that is Black, if someone that you know, a colleague of yours has said something that you know is wrong, correct them and educate them and let them understand, no, that was wrong for you to say. Allyship is important. You know, when we say Black Lives Matter, we're not just saying we want to be above everybody. We're just saying that we're here and we want you to see us too, and we want you to acknowledge us too, and our experience and our pain and our experience is real, you know, and we just want you to just understand that. That's it. So just stand with us and stand beside us and support us and uplift us. That's what I would say.
I would say that it's same thing as what Jennifer just said, that it's all about conversation. It's all about using your platform correctly, neighborhood, community, just having that conversation, that open conversation, an honest one. And there's something I wanted to say. So, someone in my neighborhood said on one of my walks, it was a sunny day, and they said, "Oh, I'm nearly your color." I didn't react. I just kept on walking. And then a few weeks later, he actually approached me and said, "I'm really sorry about that. I think that was wrong of me to say that." And that began a conversation, as simple as that. He noticed that made me feel uncomfortable. And then we opened up a conversation and we spoke. So I think it's as easy as that. And it's the same around a dinner table. If someone brings up that conversation, don't sway away from it, just have it. And because you don't know who you're educating through your path. So me not laughing and brushing it off and him seeing me visibly uncomfortable, that allowed us to have a conversation at the end of it. So I think that's something we need to be aware of and just continue communicating like this and using good platforms and talking about stuff at work and just open up. And thank you for having me, Claire.
I would just say thank you to everyone. And with regards to anything that we've learned or anything that we can take from this is all about educating yourself, doing your own personal homework, knowing your rights. And also as well, if you're in any form where you feel that you're privileged, use that privilege to help others achieve what you have as well. And also speak up when you see something's wrong, when you see something's not right. And also educate other people. So your family, your relatives, your kids, your cousins, set a good platform for them as well. And yes, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Yes, absolutely. Just like double that as well. Like, thanks so much everybody for joining. Like, it is like a good first step. Like my biggest thing is like, don't be a bystander. Like, you wouldn't let someone bully your kid or your brother, or your sister, or anybody in your family. Like, don't let people bully someone of color or someone that's a woman or somebody that's any type of minority. Like, you have the power to stand, take whatever platform you have, because you might be more privileged than the next person. So take that power and just stand up for everybody else. Thank you everybody for joining.
Thank you. Yeah, as on behalf of myself and on behalf of Women Tech Makers, it's been a really awesome panel. Like, I really appreciate you all giving up your evening to do this panel and educate all of us. And it's definitely been a great experience for me.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Much, everybody. Peace.